Well, I'm not an eminent statesman. I'm simply a very humble soul from Iskado, a town which got its name, or a traditional area which got its name out of the independence struggle. We had Dutch Sekondi and we had British Sekondi. British Sekondi suffered a lot during the independence struggle. The chief was beaten up and tortured because of the independence struggle. The Queen Mother died because of the independence struggle. So they asked themselves, how can the British beat the chief of British Sekondi? And in those days, with the fervor of nationalism, said we don't want any British name after us again. So Iskado. Unfortunately, like I said about a week ago, we called ourselves Iskado and still speak English. But I think today, as I was sitting there and heard the young man, Anasa, speaking, I said, oh, well, this guy should be the one interacting with you because he's about the same age as you. His beard is still black. The proverbs he was given, and it was something. I need to come and learn at your feet, young man. The first thing I would say is that I must humbly tell you that there's one thing I know. And the one thing I know is that I don't know. And so I'm still learning. And nothing is greater or more important than the past, because that's all you have. All your wealth is in the past. The future never comes. It's the past that you use to build the future. But within that past is a heritage. And the heritage is what you have inherited, according to the Englishmen. And so most of us are throwing our heritage away. I really don't understand why. When I was sitting down and heard Lady Ariam talking, I remember the song that an auntie of mine sang. I can't sing it very well. But at that time, my book was about to be published, this one that she was talking about. It was about being published. And when I heard the song, I called the publisher and asked him, have you gone into print yet? Then he said no. Then I said, please hold on. You know, these days with computers, you can easily go and put things in there. I said, hold on, there's something that I want to put in. And she was sitting in the kitchen. An old woman says, Yemen, we have our country. English abrofo ababeji. The Englishman has come to take it over. Kwame Nkrumah, sorry, Kwame Nkrumah, get up. And then went on to sing, Bronyi Sosonza Mako. White man, take your things away. When she finished, she sat down for about a minute and said, and this is the part that got me, it wasn't the song. And Infante, say, yes, once a banquet, if asked the white man to go, now we are following them. And I went to her, I said, do you know what you're saying? She says, but we are trying to be white in everything. And sometimes you sit back and ask yourself, we want to remake Ghana in the image of the white man. Meanwhile, the name Ghana came about because we wanted to name ourselves and go back. Otherwise, we'd have left it at Gold Coast. Then we are white. Yeah, bro, for some. It was consciously taken. And identity is so important that it is a consciousness statement. I am. When you say I am a Ghanaian, what does it mean? When you say I'm an African, what does it mean? I remember, what's the name of the late anthropologist or historian, political scientist. He was from Kenya, but he's gone. Ali Mazrui, on a particular platform saying that Nkrumah was a great African, but a bad Ghanaian. I'm just paraphrasing. And when I heard that, I also remember my late uncle, my predecessor, who spent the longest time in prison during the struggle for independence, and the only one tortured. And he said, you can only be a Ghanaian by being African. So here was I, of course, I share the opinion of my predecessor Because when you understand who you are, when you understand the African personality, it should be behind you. There's something like fear. It vanishes. You wear your skin because you know your skin. You are not trying to get out of your skin. God gave you this blackness. God gave you this color because it's unique among the human family. And you express your humanity through that color. And if you're not African, and you reduce yourself to, but you keep on dividing. So even the philosophies we follow, who teaches us those philosophies? Yesterday, I was at a conference and met a woman who taught me the word Sobona. It's a Zulu word. And she explained it and my jaw dropped. Because the Zulu have already given us one word, Ubuntu, which is a philosophy most of us don't even go into. I am because we are. Because we are, I am. I am because I belong. Because I belong, I am. So long as we are, I am. And so on and so forth. You know, as soon as you make the statement, I am, you're talking about consciousness. So, unfortunately for us, I was just making a few notes as I was sitting there. And one thing that occurred to me is that those who have come to Africa could give us knocks. You know, they've whipped us. It's simply because we've forgotten who we are. And we are not building on the knowledge that we should have acquired and used over time. What's the name of the young South African, Steve Biko? The greatest tool in the hands of the oppressed, or the greatest weapon in the hands of the oppressor, is the mind of the oppressed. Who controls your mind? Who feeds your mind? Who manipulates your mind? Is it from your own heritage, or is it from somebody else's heritage? If you want to be white people, go to England, go to America, go and learn their social theory and social political systems, among other things. All of you sit here, things that if I say, they'll be so outrageous, and I've decided that I don't want to stir controversies. Why do you put red carpet there when people are coming? Why? Is it your culture? If you know those who sat on daisies, what they did to Africans, anytime an African sits on a daisy, you will shake your head. I know who I am. I know what I am. I know what is meant by the African personality. Do you? My grandmother used to sing every day. I never knew that she was teaching me. Every day she would say, what heritage are they leaving for us? What are we going to inherit? And heritage comes, it is not just materially. It's in thoughts. As a young man was, Nana Sasi was saying, speaking the Proverbs, we can all say a stitch in time saves what? 9. But say something in your own, baby kakam papa, nam papaya krada. The other person will be wondering, what are you talking about? You know? Because we are moving out of our own locus. When you move out of your own locus, then whatever locus you go into controls you and owns you. Do you own Africa? If you own Africa, you use African ideas, African models, African systems, African philosophies to be African and govern Africa. Once you go and borrow, you go to the universities, which are usually the citadels of Europeanism. They call it ivory tower. After all, I'm ebony. You know? Once you enter them, you come out white. I always make a joke about the things we learn in schools. Pussycat, pussycat, where have you been? And of course, when you are pussycatting to England, definitely when you grow up, you want to go and shake the hand of the Queen, among other things. So really, if you don't know your heritage, it's what you inherit, the values you inherit. We've seen that a lot of things are happening within Africa generally, not just Ghana, within Africa. The good thing about Ghana, or the fact that it's blessed, is the fact that people have seen this place as the home of Pan-Africanism. You're sitting here, I'm sure that if I start singing Bob Marley's song, Emancipate Yourself, you all start singing. The joy about it is that even the mentally enslaved will start singing, not being aware of the chains they are carrying on their heads, and they will be dancing. And what does it mean by being mentally enslaved? By somebody else's heritage. As far back as 1913, Kesley Hayford and Kobina Nketsia V from the Gold Coast National Research Institute. And the objective was to remove the white man's standpoint from the black man's point of view. As far back as that time. By 1916, 15-16, Nketsia was so worried. I watched the play quite recently, performed by Wesley Girls. And I was sitting with one beautiful lady who turned around and said, look at what we have all become. And Nketsia wrote it as far back as 1916. How many of you are reading Kobina Nketsia? Zero. And yet he was known in 1943 as the philosopher of the West Coast, not just the Gold Coast. Fanon wrote his black skins, white face or something, white mass. It was rejected as a thesis. Why should somebody reject something as a thesis? And then when it was published, it became a bestseller. Then the person went and said, look, I knew this thing was damn good, but then I could not publish it. I could not accept it because the establishment wouldn't accept it. Why? Who is controlling your thoughts? Are your thoughts controlled by your own history? We've lived in divisions. I said, British Sekendi, Dutch Sekendi, the Asante, Fanti. Who profited from all this? In whose interest were we divided? When the Fantis tried to form a confederacy as far back as the 1850s or something, they were all caught and jailed. Saba's father and so on, Reverend McHayford and so on. They were jailed and they wanted to unite. Say, how dare you unite? Africans were hurrying to unity. OAU. Who were the people who prevented them from uniting? If you don't see people's interests and think candidly, believe you me, who profits from Africa's disunity? Who profits from Ghanaian disunity? I sometimes make jokes. Recently, I was speaking in Cape Coast University. We had a forum, and it was all about the right wing and left wing. And I asked myself, right wing of what and left wing of what? And you'll be talking the ultra right, center right, center of what? Center middle of what? See, if you don't question these things, then you'll be following things. In fact, when I look at Ghana's so-called political parties, and I know why I use the phrase so-called political parties, one calls himself, what? Is it Social Democrat? Then the other one calls himself, look, I'm trying to look for those philosophers in Fanti or something. I can't find them. It's only when I go to England or go to America that I understand, Europe, that I understand the meaning of these philosophies. But here, meanwhile, the so-called Social Democrats are supposed to be the ones who intervene. But in our history, rather, it's the Liberal Democrats who have been doing the social interventions. Then you ask yourself, what kind of things are we doing? So really, we need to rethink about ourselves. And the only way we can find ourselves and get the right navigation and go back to what the kind of things our ancestors built. Egypt was built way back. The pyramids, they don't even know how they built them. At the time, the Moroccans were invading, and the Muslim Moroccans, aided by mercenaries from England, were coming down to Songhai between 1400 and 1500. The Portuguese had appeared on our coast. Most of us don't see the big thing that was happening. From then on, we have been struggling. One young man, I'm sure he might be listening to me in secondary. One day when I was talking to him, he says, "But Nana, if these people had not come, we would have been naked." And I answered him very calmly. I said, "Yes, they came to teach us how to weave kente. They taught the North how to make smokes, then to put the nail into his coffin." I said, when Mansa Musa was going to Mecca, he was naked. And immediately, he knew that he had made a mistake, and he knelt and said, "And I'm sorry." I said, "Don't worry, it's not your fault. You don't know your past. When you substitute somebody else's past for your past, you are finished." And that is why our ancestors had oral traditions. Because your history must be your history. It mustn't be told to you by somebody. We used to read Tarzan, and it was Tarzan, a white man, who would come down to Africa and translate the language of animals to Africans. I mean, how? But it's gone on. We go to school and we read books written by white people about Africa, and we think that that's the truth about ourselves. So we see ourselves from the mirror of somebody else's culture. And therefore, we mistranslate ourselves. We don't know who we are. So heritage is so important. So important that please immerse yourself in young people. Go deep within it. The philosophies of existence are there. Recently I was talking about Kweku Anansi. You know, when Lady Ariam was speaking, says, "I'm not gone yet." Let me tell you something. Death is always in front of me. I never move away from it. It gives me a perspective about life. It shapes, because I know I'm going there. And so now I understand why my ancestors refer to death as Odumankuma Wu. Death, the great benefactor. But then, going on, I sometimes talk about Kweku Anansi. We sit here and we are busy calling ourselves Presslers, Patricias, June, what else? January, and so on and so forth. Go and listen to every names when they pronounce them. Beautiful. Then they start to translate them into English so that those who are with them, they will understand. Beautiful names. The names don't even belong to you. One part, every name that you wear is given to you. Everything about you is inherited within the culture that you come from. That's why the Fantis say, "What we impa, what we not to, ebusiem." You don't come alone. It's the ebusien that makes you a human being. We are now destroying the ebusien. Busy destroying it. Because we've imbibed what is referred to as competitive individualism. Me, me, me. Or somebody will say the triangular, me, myself, and I. Finished. Which is directly against the consciousness of Ubuntu. So our heritage, we don't even understand. So you find all kinds of Africans on escapist agenda. They're escaping. They are going into various churches, they're saying that malam, that imam, that pastor. You don't understand why they are multiplying. It just shows a confused society. The direction is not there. Why were we not seeking these things so many years ago? We even love, let me use it. People call them colonial masters. I never call them masters, oppressors. We even love our oppressors much more than we do. So in our history books, they'll tell you, "Oh, Gagisbeg did this for us." Gagisbeg, he came, he did nothing for you. He had one ambition. He came here to work for Britain. That's the objective. So he came, he was doing plans for the Volta. He was doing those plans to serve his country. He wasn't doing those plans to serve you. He built Takoradi Harbour. He built Takoradi Harbour so they can carry your goods away. And the year Takoradi Harbour was opened, the amount of goods that left Ghana could have given us 10 Takoradi Harbours. You need to get your head right. And it's based on your heritage, in which embodies your history, your traditions, and so on. Yesterday, somebody referred, I don't call myself a traditional leader anyway. Mainly because I know what the word tradition means. If you don't know it, you use it. So, and you can only understand it through your heritage. When I was being introduced, chiefs don't behave like this. So I'm doing a book called Talking Myself into Silence. Chiefs are, Of course, today we talk. We move around, we do this, we do that. These days you have chieftaincy disputes multiplying all over the place. Then you ask yourself, but nobody wanted to be chief in the past. The person was compelled to be a chief. We're catching him. So why is it that now we go to God, go and sit before a judge who doesn't even know my culture, and then he would then decide, look at papers to tell me this, that, and that? What has happened? That a position nobody sought, today people seek it. What has gone right or what has gone wrong? That these are the thoughts for you, for example. Traditional ruler. I don't rule. I've never ruled. Because in Fante, there's only one way I can say it. Nana awesome naman. How can Obi awesome become a ruler? I'm here to serve. I'm the servant of the servants. The one load. The young man was coming to carry my book, and I told him, though, I carry my own load. I knew what I was saying. Among other things. So the challenge is that, do you know yourself as Africans? Do you know your heritage? And if you have a heritage, what have you done with it to build a better future? I know where I'm going when I die. Do you know who the Yamidadao is? Somebody sent me a WhatsApp when I was coming about what a Catholic priest told him years back, but I won't tell you. I mean, this is not the forum for it, but I started laughing. We say, Obincha Bofrabe Yame. What are all these priests doing? They are teaching you? Are you a child? So when I stood up, I said, yes, one of the words or names for God in Fante is Obatan Payami. Obatan is woman. And just surprise people, because most of us are not even thinking that way. So the challenge of our heritage is, how do we use it? It's all that we have. The future you will never get tomorrow. You have only today. But today is built on what? Yesterday. And the day before yesterday. That's where the wealth is. That's where the blueprints, that's where the models are. That's where you find the right paradigm. You find the right framework. Whose paradigm are we using to govern this space? In 1960, Ghana became a republic. And I'm really happy for today and the noise that has been generated, because we've celebrated holidays meaninglessly. Holidays are conscious days, days to renew your consciousness. And the controversy that has been generated is stirred up to renew, in a way, it renews our consciousness. I love it when I hear Nkrumah say, what? The independence of Ghana. You all know it, am I right? But let me go back to the 1961. After we had become a republic, then he made a statement. He says, now that we are virtually, I'm paraphrasing him, now that we are virtually on our own, let us now look for the ways to govern how we are going to govern ourselves. We never did. Either he didn't make the moves, or maybe the attempts to kill him made him also withdraw from making those moves. But we've continued in the European manner. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker. This is the challenge. This is the challenge. In 1950, when the Cozy Constitution was created, what the Cozy did was they removed our culture and put it aside. Chiefs, I'm not saying that chiefs should be there, but there was nothing novel. We went and brought the British Westminster form of democracy. It was introduced by a black Englishman called Cozy. Henry Cozy, you all know that. Kobina Nketsia V was so mad, he said, look, this constitution is going to finish this country. Now, we've been trying to correct that error in the foundation with one constitution, coup d'etats, and so on and so forth. What is there? What is in there? Is Westminster democracy my heritage? Is it my heritage? Do I know the democracy in the villages? Do I know the democracy before indirect rule? Before assimilation, French assimilation? Do I know the war parties, how we went to war and so on and so forth, how we mobilized for war within our own heritage? We never did. They asked you not to read Marcus Garvey. If your enemy tells you don't read this book, that's the book you should read. How many of you have read Garvey? I'm sure you haven't. In the 1920s, 30s, Garvey was banned from the Gold Coast. Because Clifford managed to become a knight of the Garvey movement. Sechi stood away from it. But the question is, have you even picked up Garvey's opinions and philosophies? He said, and it's fairly, the white man rules the world through what? Propaganda. You had Akon come here, I think, during the diaspora thing, to tell you that, look, it's a brand they are marketing. If I tell you define democracy, you define it a la America or something of the sort. How do you define democracy in your village? You don't know. Or how do you define governance in your village? What is your inheritance? When the word Aban came into our language, it did not mean government. Aban means slave castle or slave fort. It's when you want to abandon it means you are in prison. Aban kaba, handcuffs. Aban yedu, it's oppressive. Aban ejuma wochu na the ones here. I mean, where they carry their chiefs. Somewhere they even pray. What is all this? Are you thinking? Are you being challenged by your own heritage? What was there? When we say a man boo, what do we mean? Is it only one Indian wrote that those who struggle for independence within the colonial world had become the foot soldiers of the European paradigm. It was quite interesting. It provokes thought. You don't have a revolution. You don't break away from colonialism and follow colonial footsteps. It's wrong. And it's your heritage that will cause the real revolution. Once you become African, the revolution has begun. But to be African is the most difficult thing at this time. As the young man was saying, you are watching, is it Kumchacha or something? Kumbaja. I don't even watch them. I don't listen and watch the media because they don't enhance my being as an African. A 19-year-old boy, 18 or 19-year-old boy told me this morning, Nana, radio nazi it's here then because we are always quarreling. Time behind the wash nazi. You know? And so these things are important. Do we build a nation state or do we grow by insulting each other? Is that our heritage? Thinking is a very difficult thing, and yet easy. That is why your ancestors gave you a model, Kweku Anansi. First, he's called Kweku. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, which is 4. 4 is the day for wisdom. It is governed by the star of wisdom, Awuku. Then you have Kweku Anan, another 4. Right? So 4, say. 4 plus 4 speaks. 4 plus 4. And this is from your ancestors. They were using the absolute science of mathematics to speak to you. 4 plus 4 is what? 8. Of course. When we are doing something on Nenda Wachi, do you think about it? Nenda Wachi. Meanwhile, 8 is a symbol for eternity. And your ancestors, they didn't know. So sometimes instead of saying Nenda Wachi, they say, Eda or Sende, Dasende. You'd have come back to the original point. The complete cycle. What is the shape of Anansi? 8. How many legs does it have? 8. Where does Anansi's strength comes from? It comes from within. It spins its word from within. Where is Anansi? It is here. Go to the toilet. It is sitting there. When it walks, you don't hear. It recites in silence. That is wisdom. Aza inya onsa. And yet, you are busy learning Hansel and Gretel. I did. I remember those were the stories, the Hans Christian Andersen fairy tales. Learn them in school. Whenever my granny would ask us to tell a story, I would jump first and give those stories. One day, my grandmother, a very interesting woman, she is the one who stopped the curfew in Secondary Itakwadi. He says, from henceforth, no more curfew. During the period of, very interesting woman. She was badly beaten up and brought the only thing Ghanaians did in demand of independence. It's called positive action. And when my grandmother was beaten up, my uncle came in and got angry and told the white man to leave his territory. These are stories you don't know, but this is not the forum for it. But the reason why I said is, one day she looked at me when I told one of those stories, says, your world is a strange world, though. Your stories are always about princes and princesses, and then they end up marrying and live happily ever after. It's a strange world for her. But an ideology was being put in my head. A feudal ideology. Meanwhile, we live in an equalitarian state, equalitarian philosophy. How many philosophies of equalitarianism are we pushing? No, everything is feudal. They have their royals, the nobles, the commoners, the peasants, the serfs, and the slaves. Now that has been transformed into upper class, middle class, lower class. They have always lived in a class-structured society. We are busy copying the disunity and fragmenting our societies. And your heritage doesn't teach you this. What do you do about it? You learn your heritage. Somebody has dropped a nuclear bomb into his family. So you call it nuclear families. Yeah, have family, oh. There's no nuclear bomb in it. You've been made to fear even your villages. And meanwhile, your ancestors would tell you, Obi Infanisa Benkuminche Nasi. But you are sitting here, hey, my village, witches. Then your ancestors were witches. You can't go, you fear. Why? Because you're going to the origins. It is when you get to the origins, as you go, you get to Egypt. We carry chiefs in something called Apakan, unveiling the light. It is carried by 4 heads. Again, it's carried by the wisdom of the community. Why do we even carry? Why is the Apakan shaped like a boat? We don't even think about these things because the African speaks in symbols. And he writes in symbols. You see chiefs sitting in state and they'll be wearing the inverted triangle. How many of you ever think about it? Which human being has the inverted triangle? That's a joke anyway. It's only the woman. So why should a man wear the woman as well? What is he or she trying to say? You are laughing. I'm sure you haven't thought about it. It's just a deco. Why does the chief wear gold? If you don't know your heritage, you won't understand. Why do you bring your cloth down? It is not in subjectivity. It is the purity. As I am an African, I know that I'm a spiritual being. I translate everything from a non-material basis and move to the material. But you need to think. You need to think. You need to think. Before I take my seat so that we may interact, one of the proverbs that I've said before, and I'm sure that Nana Sassi knows it better, was it? Ikwanansia na ekun yimpa. Do you think about it? But even more importantly, what's it? Ansana odomankwa bobo wiazin na anansi kokoko otinego. God is also known as Anansi Kokoko. Thank you.